Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a magic number generator in Microsoft PowerPoint. Let me show you how it works. So here we have the screen that asks us for any number between 25 and 100. Let's put in the number 32. Once the user types in their chosen number and clicks Next, PowerPoint automatically generates a magic number square. What's magic about it? Well, if we have a look at the top row, we'll see that those numbers add up to the user's chosen number, 32. And the second row also adds up to 32, and the third row and the fourth row. More than that though, the whole of the first column adds up to 32, and the second column, and the third and the fourth. More than that, you can take a diagonal. Those numbers add up to the user's choice as well, and the other way of course too. You can even take the four corners, those add up to 32. And you can also take the top left square, those numbers add up to the user's choice, and on the right, and at the bottom, and on the bottom right as well. Oh, don't forget the square in the middle, those numbers also add up to 32, and you can even take some odd combinations like the two diagonal corners in that direction and also that direction. And remember, the user can choose any number between 25 and 100, and PowerPoint will automatically generate a magic square which works for that particular number choice. It uses just a few lines of VBA code, and it's pretty simple and quick to put together. So let's see how we get on with this. So let's get started then. I'm going to start this from the very beginning. So the first thing that we need is a blank slide. So I'm going to choose Layout and select Blank. We then want a second slide, also blank, and it's on this second slide that we're going to put our grid. Now I'm going to change the design of this just simply so that this becomes a little bit clearer and easier to see. And then what I'm going to do is go to the Insert tab and select Shapes. We'll want a square for this, so choose the rectangle selection there. Now when you choose a rectangle or a circle or anything like that, you'll notice that you can actually create any sort of relative four-sided shape. And if you want an exact square, it can be a little difficult to work out exactly where it's supposed to be positioned. If you hold down the Shift key though, it snaps the shape to be a perfect square, or if you're using a circle tool, a perfect circle. So there I've got a perfect square, about that size is good. And then what I can do is, you can obviously change the color and everything. I'll just use a preset style for the moment to keep things quick and simple. And then I'll need to right click on it and edit text, and we're going to put the number 8 into this square. Next I'll need to just increase the font size a bit so that's more visible, so about like that looks good to me. And once I've created one square, I'll then select it and press Ctrl D. Ctrl D is duplicate, which is quicker than doing copy and paste. But there's also another advantage of using Ctrl D, because once I've positioned my duplicate in the right position, which is about there, I can press Ctrl D again and again, and I get two more copies put in the same relative position to the original. And now I need to select that whole row, and then I'm going to Ctrl D again to duplicate that whole row, bring that down to the right position, around there looks good, and then I can press Ctrl D two more times to create the whole grid. Now, some of the numbers in our magic number square are going to always be the same. So this top left one, for example, will always say 8. No matter what number the user chooses, this top one will always say 8. Some of these numbers will always stay the same. 4 of them, though, will vary depending upon what number the user enters. So that's part of the secret of this grid. So what we have to do then is select some of these numbers and change these. So the first one is 8, next is 11, the third one is going to be blank for the moment, that will have a variable number in it, and then we have a 1. On the second row, this one is blank, then the second one is a 2, then we have a 7, and then we have a 12. On the third row, we start off with a 3, then we have a blank box, and then we have a 9, and a 6. And then on the bottom row, we start off with a 10, follow it up with a 5, and then a 4, and then our final one is blank. Now, what we have to do is to name the 4 blank squares. So we're going to name this one A, this one B, this one C, and this one D. And it'll be those 4 squares which will have different numbers in, depending on what number the user chooses at the beginning. How do we name shapes? Well, what we need to do is come up to this option at the top right that says Select, and then come down to the bottom option where it says Selection Pane. This opens the panel on the right hand side, and we can see each of these shapes has a name already called Rectangle 1 to Rectangle 16, but we can change those names easily enough. What I'm going to do is click on this square in the second row. I'm going to call this one A. So we can see at the moment, as soon as I click on it, Rectangle 5 has been selected. That is the one we want. So I can simply click on that again and type in whatever name I want for that square. So that square now has the name A. We're going to do the same thing for this square, which is currently Rectangle 3, and change that to B. And then this one at the bottom right is going to be C, so we change that here to C. And then finally this one gets the D. So there we are, we're into D. Now, once we've named these A, B, C and D shapes, we're done on this slide. We can close the selection pane and go back to slide 1. Now there are 3 things that we'll need on here. One of them is simply a text box, so we can put the text box here, and we're going to say, please enter a number between 25 and 100. So I'll make that a little bit larger, increase the font size, something like that will do. And put that roughly in the middle. There we are. Next, what we'll need is 2 things from the developer toolbar. Now, it's possible you don't have the developer toolbar, but don't worry, you can get it very easily and quickly. Simply go to any of the tabs in your ribbon, find a blank area somewhere on one of those tabs and right-click. Then choose Customize the Ribbon. And what you're looking for is this list on the right hand side. This is a list of all of the tabs which you could have in your PowerPoint presentation. And you'll notice that at the bottom here, or near the bottom, Developer is listed. I currently have a tick in that box because it's visible. If you don't see the Developer toolbar, then you'll obviously see a blank tick box. Simply put a tick in there, click OK, and you will have this new tab. Now there are 2 things we need from here. One is a text box, which is this second option here. So we'll click on that, draw it out, and put that roughly where we want. That'll do. And then we also want a button, which is the 4th option here in that little area. So we'll click on that command button and draw a button underneath. Now we need to change the properties of these. I want to change the font size, for example, of this text box. And of course we'll want to change the text on this command button. But these aren't like normal shapes or text boxes in PowerPoint, so how do you change the properties? Well, what you'll need to do is use the Properties option in the Developer toolbar. So if I select the text box here and I click on Properties, you'll see I get a list of all the things I can change about the text box. If I click on the Command button, you'll see that there are various things that I can change about that as well. Not quite so many, but there's a list of things that I can change. For example, the foreground colour, which is the text colour, the background colour, and the font, things like that. I can also change the caption, and the caption is the text that's on the button. Currently that says the name of the button, which is Command Button 1, so I can change the caption and simply put in Next. You can put anything you like, obviously go, OK or whatever, but I'll just put Next. I'll increase the font slightly as well, so I'll choose the font option here, click on the little ellipsis button on the right hand side, and I'll change the font to size 26, I think. There we are, that's about right. Now with the text box, this text box here doesn't have anything in it, so it's hard to see what the font would look like. If you come down to the option that says text here, you can type in a number. I chose 32. We can see that's laughably small, so we need to increase the font size. So let's go to font again, click on ellipsis, and I'm going to change this to 84 and click OK. That's slightly too high for it, so I'll just increase the size of the text box. That's about fine. I'll also want this to be centered, so in the text align option I can choose the center option. There we are, that's fine. Now we don't actually want to have a number in this box when the user starts working with this, so I'll need to go back to text and delete that number. There we are, and then I can close the properties toolbar. So there we are, we've now got all of these bits and pieces set up just as we want. The final thing to do now is the code. Now the code is going to go in this button here because that's where all the magic happens. As soon as we click the number, then the code will take the number the user has entered into this text box. And by the way, you'll need to know the name of the text box, and you'll see if you go to properties that it's called, in the name property there, text box 1. You can change that, but there's really no need. So text box 1 will contain some text, and we're going to put that text into a number or use it as a number and then do a couple of very, very simple calculations with it, and then put the results of those calculations into the appropriate boxes A, B, C and D on our grid. So how do we do the code? Well, we click on the command button, or the next button, and then if we double click, it opens up our code window. It might open up full screen, it doesn't really matter, but the code window is separate to your PowerPoint presentation. You'll see that it's opened up a block of code for us to put our instructions in. These are instructions that are going to be in our command button 1 click. So all of our code will be between this private sub command button 1 and the end sub. All takes place inside there. Incidentally, if this is your first foray into coding in PowerPoint, welcome. It's a fantastic world, lots of fun, and congratulations. Do leave a comment below if this was your first attempt at coding. If you're used to coding already, then this is going to be very, very simple and easy to do, not much to it. The first thing, though, is I'm going to create a variable. What's a variable? Well, a variable is a place in the computer's memory where you can store a bit of information, and you can label that part of the computer's memory so that you know where that bit of information is being put. So I'm making the computer create a little space in the memory, and I'm going to call it M. That's the label on the little box, if you like, I'm going to put the number into. So dim M, and this is going to be a whole number. It's going to be an integer. So I'm actually going to say, in that box, we're going to label the box M, and we're going to have a whole number in there. So dim M as integer. Then we're going to say, well, what is M? M is going to equal the value of whatever is in that text box 1, and it's the value of the text that's in it. So it's val brackets text box 1 dot text. So now somewhere in the computer's memory will be a little space labeled M, and inside that little space will be a number. It'll be the number that the user entered. If we didn't use val, then the computer would just see that as text. Even though the text contained digits, the computer might just see it still as text. So it's a good idea to make sure that we are looking at the value of the text and not just text. Think of it a little like your mobile number. You don't think about your mobile number as being a number that you could double and divide by 3 or something like that. It's more like text. It's like an address. It's like a name rather than a number. We think of mobile numbers as being more like a name or address or something than something we could do mathematical calculations with. And it's a bit like that with a computer. So we have to tell it, no, we're not just looking at this as a name or text. We want this to be considered a number. Okay, now what do we do? Well, now we come to 4 lines of code, but we can cheat a bit. We can write 1 line of code, then copy it 3 times and make 1 little tiny change each time. So here goes the code. It's active presentation dot slides, and then in brackets 2. Now this is because our grid is on slide 2. If you've put this within a bigger presentation, or you've put a slide in for the title or something like that, then obviously you'll need to change that number to represent whatever number the grid is on. So that's just fairly simple there. Dot shapes, because it's the shapes we're looking at, and now we have to say which shape is it. We've named our shape A, the first shape there, so in speech marks we put the name of it. Again, if you called your first box Eric, then you'll simply put Eric in speech marks. Then we have dot text frame, because it's not really the shape we're looking at, it's the text frame inside it, and then dot text, which is a similar property to the one we used in our text box. Now, what is that text going to equal? Well, it's going to equal that number that's in M, but it's that number minus 21. Okay, so we're going to take whatever number the user enters. Let's say I put in 32, for example. We're going to take that number 32 and subtract 21 from it, and then that resulting number will go into our A box in our grid. Now, we can copy that line of code now and paste it 3 more times. So we've got 4, and all we have to do here is change each of the letters to A, then B, then C, and then D. And these numbers go down by 1, so it's 21, then it's 20, then it's 19, and then it's 18. And that's actually it. That will now change our grid. We've created a magic square. However, you're kind of forcing the user to then realize they have to click somewhere to go on to the next slide. So let's do that bit for them. So to take them onto the next slide so they can actually see the magic square, we need to put the line of code active presentation. And by the way, I do apologise for the rattly keyboard. I realise this keyboard is fairly noisy, and it's fairly close to the microphone as well. So I apologise for the banging and rattling. If you have a suggestion of a really quiet keyboard I could use, please leave it in the comments section below. I'm looking for a silent keyboard. Anyway, it's active presentation dot slideshow window, and you can see that obviously these are appearing in the drop-down list. You can simply select those if you wish to save typing, and then it's dot view and then dot next, which simply takes us to the next slide. So that's it. That's actually all we need to do. Let's try this. So let's close our code window. We need to save our presentation. Now this is important because when we save this, let's just go to the desktop for this. When we save this, we can't just save it as a PowerPoint presentation because it includes code. And that code will be lost if we just save it as a PowerPoint presentation. So what we have to do is change it to a PowerPoint macro enabled presentation. That will now allow us to save this as a PowerPoint presentation that includes code, which will run. So let's just save this as number grid and then click save. There we go. So if I now run this, so I press F5 to run it, please enter a number between 25 and 100. I'll put in the number 50 here, and then I click next. Takes us on to the next slide, and you can see that those four squares, that were blank, have now got numbers in them. And those numbers equal the number 50 minus 21, then minus 20, then minus 19, and then finally minus 18. But of course, most importantly, you can see that if you were to take any row, any column, any diagonal, any group of 4 squares that are together, any 4 squares together, and even those other odd combinations I showed you at the beginning, you'll see those all add up to 50. So we have created a magic number square. Fantastic. Now, there is of course a problem with this, and that is, well, first of all, let me just point out, by the way, when you have done this, you'll see that the number the user entered is included in this text box. Now if you just want to quickly get rid of that, you can go back to developer, click on properties and change the value of text just to remove that. But there are 2 other things that we can do. The first thing is that at the moment, if the user enters a number which is less than 25 or more than 100, then the computer will still carry on with that. I mean, it will work. Well, it will work to a degree, but you might end up with minus numbers, and you might end up with numbers which are so monumentally huge that it's really obvious what's going on. So we want to restrict them to just entering a number between 25 and 100. But also, if I was to enter something stupid, like a burger, then obviously we're going to end up with a problem. And there we are, we've got something really weird going on there. So I need to make sure that we're checking, first of all, that what the user is entering is valid. How do we do that? Well, what I'm going to do is double-click the next button here to open up our code window again, and I'm simply going to put in here if, I'm asking the question, if the value of textbox1.text is less than 25, or the value of textbox1.text is greater than 100, then what we can do is we could put a message up. We could tell the user that it's not a valid number. I'll show you how to do that if you're not sure. So message box, and then in speech marks, please enter a valid number between 25 and 100. Or put in whatever message you want. Make sure that message is in speech marks and in brackets. Then what we'll probably want to do is to clear whatever is in the text box. So we'll simply say textbox1.text equals, and then speech mark, so basically that means blank. And then what we want to do is make sure the computer doesn't carry on to do all these lines of code. So we actually want to say, okay, if they have put something in which is wrong, then at this point, come out of this subroutine. Come out of this bit of code, we don't want to carry on with it, so exit the sub. And then we'll just put end if at the end of that. So let's test that, let's see what happens. So if I press F5 and I put in a number, let's say I put in 120, please enter a valid number between 25 and 100, and the text box is blank. If I put something silly in, like giraffe, then again, please enter a valid number between 25 and 100, and it goes blank. So there we are, we've actually managed to do that easily. You could also put in a similar line of code to this textbox1.text equals blank. I'll simply copy that line of code, and I'll put that just between the line of code that says change all those squares in our number grid and then move on to the next slide. The reason I've done that, and I'll show you if I just run this presentation, let's put in the number 30 this time, click next. So there is my grid, and it's all obviously now calculating rows, columns, diamonds, diagonals, boxes, all that sort of stuff, so that they add up to 30. But if I come out of the presentation, you'll see that that text box no longer contains the number the last user entered, so it's ready to start with the next person. So that's it. I mean, that's pretty much all there is to it. I hope you have fun with it. If you enjoyed this presentation, enjoyed the tutorial, please do consider giving this video a like. It does make a difference. And if you haven't subscribed already, or this is the first video that you've seen from the Tech Train, please do consider subscribing. That would be absolutely fantastic. Little red button just down there, won't take you a second. That would be very much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Any comments or questions, leave them below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.